Welcome to the Construction Disruption Podcast, where we uncover the future of design, building, and remodeling.
I'm Todd Miller of Isaiah Industries, manufacturers specialty residential metal roofing and other building materials. Today, my co-host is Ryan Bell. Ryan, how you doing today?
Hey, good morning, Todd. I'm doing great. How are you?
I'm doing well also. So I kind of had a interesting story yesterday with my mom. This was interesting. So she had called me the night before, about 10 o'clock at night. She lives 2 doors down, so that helps. But she called me and said that you won't believe what's in my house. I have this huge bat flying around inside my house. And bats kind of freak people out, as we know. So I kind of, she really didn't get too upset about it. She was pretty calm about the whole thing. So I said, okay, here's what you're going to do. Close all the doors, go to bed, leave one door open and leave a light on in that room, and we'll see what's up in the morning. So in the morning, I get to her house and I knock on her door, and I immediately shine a flashlight in her face and say, hey, I'm here looking for an old bat. She actually took that with a great deal of humor, so that was good. But, you know, my mom was a farm girl, so nothing bothers farm people, I've discovered. So, anyway, we found the bat. We did hire a bat removal specialist, which, by the way, the going rate for bat removal is $300 now.
No way.
Yes.
Wow.
We had a bat removal specialist come, and he was like, I can't believe she stayed in the house last night. Nobody stays in their house when they think there's a bat in there.
Wow.
So I was proud of her. She's a farm girl through and through. Anyway, so just a reminder to our audience, once again, we are playing our challenge words here on this episode of Construction Disruption. That is whereby each of us on the show has been given some sort of secret word or phrase to try to work into conversation as seamlessly as possible. And you, the audience, can kind of guess what maybe our challenge word was if you hear us say something kind of peculiar. Peculiar is not a challenge word, by the way. And then at the end of the show, we will announce whether we were successful or not at getting in our challenge words. So, Ryan, we ready to go?
Yes, let's get started.
Great. Well, today's guest is Peter DeMaria. Having lived in California and Texas, Peter has a long history in architectural design and academia. The recipient of 6 AIA Honor Awards for Excellence in Design, Peter has also received the Bank of Manhattan's Innovative Entrepreneur of the Year Award in recognition of his progressive and committed business development focused on alternative building methodologies and systems. One of the most recent developments in Peter's career has been as Chief Design Officer and co-founder of Mid-Rise Modular, LLC. With Mid-Rise Modular LLC, he's on a mission to provide housing for the masses. Mid-Rise is a prefab 2D panel and 3D volumetric modular company focused on providing high-quality architectural solutions in an expedited manner at an affordable price. Peter really is on a quest to crack the code on the world's homeless and housing shortage challenge. So, Peter, welcome to Construction Disruption today. It's a pleasure to have you as our guest.
Thank you, Todd. Good morning to you and Ryan. Happy to be here.
Fantastic. Well, thank you again. So, a lot of times in this sort of interview format, I'll kind of start by asking the guest to tell us a little bit about how their career started. The thing that impresses me about you, and it's pretty easy as I look at your CV and all you've done, is you are really kind of live with this sense of urgency to solve problems and to create a better future. So I really want to focus on that rather than focus on your past. But I am kind of curious, is there anything in the early part of your career that really created these burning drive and passions that you have today to address the homeless issue?
I think if there was one pivotal moment, it was not an aha moment, but it was one of those moments where you're in it and you don't realize it is changing the trajectory of your entire life. And I was in undergraduate school, had pursuing a fine art degree, and just happened to take a class over in the engineering department, which was taboo at that time. The artists were not taking classes in the engineering department, the engineer for an animal, So, and I happened to take a class with a gentleman who was from Missouri originally and was kind of a disciple of Buckminster Fuller. And Buckminster Fuller was quite a Renaissance man through the entire century almost. And we had a wild idea on one of our classes. He said, let's go on up to Woods Hole, Massachusetts and meet Buckminster Fuller. And I was like, wow, yeah, exactly. So you go up there and this gentleman walks in, and you're all sitting around like young college students, and he walks into the room, and he must have been 75, something in his 70s. And he had a cane, and he walks in, but it did not matter about his age. Some folks just transcend time. He walked in, and I swear all the lights went on, right? He just this glowing fellow that carried this energy about him. And I was like, wow, this guy really is resonating. He didn't even talk much in the beginning, but you could feel he had a passion for what he was doing. He was so connected to everything we were there studying. And I'm from an Italian-American neighborhood in New Jersey. And to meet Bucky Fuller is like so outside of the norm, but it was really inspiring. And all of a sudden you start to think about how you can live as opposed to how you have lived, right? That had nothing to do with modular, right? But it was a pivotal moment where I could trace back and say, you know what? That's when I took a hard right turn, and things started off on a whole new path. So that's probably the earliest one. I can go back further and further and tell you stories about my neighborhood, and every one of those is a great story, and this helped shape me in some way, shape, or form. But I think meeting Buckminster Fuller and seeing a more worldly view of things, as opposed to a more narrow focus, the macro as opposed to the micro, was a very pivotal moment.
That is fantastic. And I love that, and I'm sure that, he probably didn't realize he was having the impact on people that he was just with that simple meeting with a bunch of undergraduate students. But fantastic how you've carried that. So I have to ask, where did you go to undergrad school at? I assume you were not an Ohio State Buckeye or anything.
I went to a small university in New Jersey called Keene University. And from Keene University, I met the professor there, Joe Clinton, who used to work with Bucky Fuller. That's how I got to meet him. And the minute I met him, I said, I'm going to graduate school.
Yeah.
I remember my dad saying, graduate school, what's that? Right? We go to a working class, blue collar neighborhood. He said, what's graduate school? I said, I go for a few more years. I want to be an architect. He goes, how many more years? And he goes, you could be a doctor. And I'm like, that's all they knew. You go beyond undergraduate school, you're going to be a doctor and attorney. But yeah, really homegrown there in New Jersey, and then went to the University of Texas. And that was another pivotal moment. That might have been probably one of the greatest things I did in my entire life, because it really opened the world up to me. And Austin, I still have a love for Austin. And recently we had the opportunity to go back and teach there for a few years at the School of Architecture, where I got my master's degree. And it's more inspiring to teach, believe it or not, than to actually be the student. It's quite an interesting dichotomy there. But Austin is a newfound home for me.
Very cool. And that's an interesting perspective, too, that's more fun to teach than be the student. And even though I've never been a professor or academia, I find this part of my career where I can build into others a lot more rewarding back when I was trying to learn all that stuff. So good stuff. So I'm curious, what do you see as the biggest barriers to solving the homeless crisis, and how does your company you have founded, Mid-Rise Modular, how are you breaking through some of those challenges?
So I'm going to answer those in reverse. I'll tell you about Mid-Rise first, and then I'll tell you what I think is the larger challenge. Mid-Rise works exclusively in light gauge steel and non-combustible materials. We don't use plywood. We are using something called shear board for our shear panels. We'll use another product called Structicrete for our flooring. So there's no plywood, there's no combustible materials in our project. So they're what we call type 1 buildings, sometimes type 2 buildings. We do that because we've seen so often that the traditional and modular wood frame buildings are susceptible to mold, termites, fire, all those things that really don't speak about longevity. And when we do create a building, there's this incredible amount of work that goes into it. And it's not like, I think Frank Lloyd Wright said that. He said, when doctors make a mistake, they get to bury their mistake, right? But when architects make a mistake, you just plant vines, right? And you just cover it up so no one sees it, right? And I've never liked that. I mean, I'm just saying it has an impact, but we have a responsibility to create something that's going to improve our quality of life, have an impact on our quality of life. And, I've always felt that our surroundings play a pivotal role in how we approach the day. And our modular company is it's got all the technical bells and whistles. I'm this innovative, kooky guy that loves to, solve problems. And that's at the core of everything. So we're on the cutting edge of what's taking place in our industry. And to be wrapped up in all the technical, but not think about, the aesthetics and how it's going to have an impact on someone's life is short-sighted. So that's where we are. We are out there trying to make a positive difference. When I grew up in New Jersey, in Elizabeth and Newark, I was closer to New York City than Philadelphia. There were projects there that were built in the 50s and the 60s, and they must have been 25-story buildings made of brick and solid buildings. Well, I think 35 years later, they tore them down. It's just not good enough to create a shelter and put people in a box, right? Because it has impact on how they live, and it's part of a much larger fabric. So we can't avoid that. That part of me as an architect just never goes away. The second part of the question and what I see the challenges are, there are some brilliant people in this field. And I learn continuously through collaboration, through speaking to gentlemen like yourself, and we just get better and better and better. And we're part of this continuum, this evolution of ideas in a prefab and modular world that continues to get better, much like a smartphone was developed. My smartphone from 15 years ago didn't look anything like what I have now. Right? And the same thing with automobiles. And you look at aerospace, and all of those industries continue to progress. But for some reason in the world of architecture, we're still doing it the way we've done it thousands of years ago. Now, the modular industry has made an incredible amount of progress, and all these brilliant people that I speak about, they solve the challenges. There's some equipment that comes out of your part of the country, roll-forming machines that are just unbelievable. People really rise to the occasion when it comes to the technical end of it. I was at the conference at the Builder Show. We were speaking about this, and one of the fabricators, a very successful company, I said, I think we only have one challenge. And he said, yeah. And at the same time, he said, people, right? There's policymakers, right? And all these rules. Now, in California, I don't know that any other state eclipses California when it comes to regulations and things along those lines. And I know they've set up in the best interest of the general public, but sometimes it just goes too far, right? And it becomes counterproductive, and it kind of stifles the development and progress. So I think with a friendlier government to development, okay, I think that you will blow the lid off the construction industry, and you'll be able to see modular and prefab work, leveraged to the max. So I think it's more about policymakers that really will open up the door. We will always have the next creative genius come along to make it better, make it faster, better quality, more affordable. So it's not a technical challenge for me. It's a policymaker challenge.
Well, I think that's really interesting, and I think it kind of leads into another thing I wanted to ask you about. So your factory is in Southern California, south of Los Angeles, and you spent a lot of your career there. No doubt that the recent tragic fires that hit the Northern California or Northern LA area, I'm sure that hit you pretty hard, but so when you look at the challenges to rebuilding, do you think a lot of those challenges will have to do with people and policy? And I know they talk about trying to open some of that up and free up some of that, but by the same token, they're still going to require adherence to current building code and things. So how do you see that playing out? Any thoughts on that?
On the outside looking in, because I'm not in the mayor's office, I think it's 5 to 7 years of recovery time. And I don't say that because I'm upset with anyone. I mean, that's no good to point fingers at anyone. But I can tell you that it's not just the rebuilding of a structure. If we had to put up a new building and policy got out of the way, we could have it done in less than a month. That's simple. I could have a house up in less than a month and you could be living in that home. They have much greater challenges there. I have some clients who had all the homes around them burned down, but the home we designed for them did not burn down. So I said, wow, you're ready to go back in? He said, well, I had the HEPA filters in and all this stuff, and they're clearing out the house to mitigate all the smoke. And I said, so when can I come over? I'd love to see the house. He said, I can't move back in. He said, the water is contaminated. So there's no water there. In the neighborhoods that had power poles, those power poles, the transformers on those power poles exploded. There's no electricity. Okay, so some of the neighborhoods that did have undergrounding electrical, right, they're back up and they're functioning, right? At least they have the electricity there. So you've got this kind of utility challenge when it comes to water and electricity, make a place safe. You also have this 9, 10, maybe 1 foot deep layer of ash. And God knows what's in it, right? So already there's a plan. I'm not sure if FEMA is spearheading it, but they're removing 6 inches of soil plus whatever's on top of it from every property. Okay, and that takes time. But it's happening right now. So it will all get rebuilt. But I believe what's going to happen is they're not going to set up a scenario whereby this can happen again. If you imagine that news report, the same thing happened again here in Palisades and in Altadena. All those power poles burned down. So they're going to underground that wire. They're going to put it all in there, but that's going to take some time. The contamination of the water, they'll figure out the contamination of the water pretty soon, but the electricity is, this is a state that said you can't have a gas appliance, right? Where you have to use electric appliances. Well, good luck with that. So I think, not in a pessimistic standpoint, I think it's going to be 5 to 7 years because I understand how projects are processed, and there are rules already in place that we have. Let's say you had a home that was 2,000 square feet, if you do not build or rebuild larger than 2,000 square feet, you're expedited with your plan check and with your building permits and all of that. Right? If I do go above that 2,000, get in line. You deal with the original process that we have that's saddled with really delays and approvals and all of those things. So I think that in that destruction and in that catastrophe, the silver lining is the process and the policymaker type of viewpoint on things is going to change dramatically because now they can see under a microscope, because of the urgency, how kind of dysfunctional things are.
Yeah.
Now, don't get me wrong. They don't get up in the morning and say, listen, we're going to make the world horrible for architects. We don't want them to get things done quickly. We have a slow growth initiative here that's unwritten, but this is the way in which we stop it because we don't want this influx of just, density. I think they're all well intended, but I think once in a while, a shakeup like this really forces us to look through a different lens. To this point, I think they've been playing the air guitar. Right now, it's time for them to really play, an instrument.
That's very interesting, I think, and thank you for that insight. Things like this really do kind of shake us up and force us to look at things that we never had thought about before. One of the things I often say, after a disaster or something that is just unheard of, you do learn things that you'd never even thought of before. And so it does open up new ways of thinking and new ways of preparing for the future, but all that takes time. So as you mentioned, you use a lot of light gauge steel in your designs today at Mid-Rise Modular. Tell me a little bit. Why do you see steel as sort of a material of choice, and what role do you see it playing in construction in the future? Obviously, we're a big believer in steel here, producing a lot of light gauge steel roofing and aluminum roofing, but kind of curious for your perspective on that.
I think if you even go back to Vitruvius, you look at quality, you look at speed, and you look at cost, right? And they're not independent of each other. They are all interwoven. And when we're working, it's not as though we woke up one day and said, we need to work in steel. What you do is you're working in the norm. You're working in wood. And then after doing your 75th project where you have the same problems for the 75th time, you go, there's got to be an alternative to this. So when you have water damage while the project's under construction, it's raining, everything's getting wet, it's wood, you have to wait for it to dry out. And then you have to worry if you have mold in your building. You have to worry, am I going to have a fire here in the future like they did out in the Palisades? Am I going to have termites in my house? Is this house going to twist and turn and warp? And am I have to put a tent over it every number of years from who knows what type of termites are in there? It seems like there's a new termite every 10 years in California. So all of those long-term costs and continuous maintenance costs are avoided when you're working in steel. And I'm able to, and if you really want to talk about it from a sustainability standpoint, I can't wrap my arms around the carbon footprint equation yet. I hear about it, I look at it, I still have, the jury's still out for me on that. But when I look in front of a house, like I did my own home in Manhattan Beach, we built it. It was a heavy gauge steel frame infilled with light gauge steel panels. And we had a dumpster in front of the neighbor's house, and they were building out of wood. And that dumpster was filled every Friday, and they would have to come and take it away. We didn't have a dumpster, okay? And when we didn't have that dumpster, what happened is if you did have some chopped off steel, you had to lock it up and hide it because folks would come by and steal it and bring it to the recycling yard, right? So even the thieves are into recycling in California. It's an interesting career, right? But there's a certain level of sustainable mindset in all of that says, wait a minute, we're going to recycle. If I'm not mistaken, I think most of the steel we're using is 60 to 70% recycled just from automobiles that have been recycled, back into the recycling line there. So it has to do with quality as well. When we're working at Mid-Rise, we get all our roll forming machines and we run them pretty darn slow. Okay, we can be in competition with Dietrich Metal and Semco and all of them. And the industry allows them to be off maybe a quarter of an inch, even 3/8 of an inch with their studs. That's okay. But we can't do that. Okay, we're within a 16th of an inch tolerance. And not only are we rolling joists and studs, but we're punching them to accommodate screws that are going to come in and fasten a stud to a track and all those different connections that take place. So if those holes don't line up, we're going to spend a lot of time drilling through the metal. So it's terribly inefficient. So that technology enables us to reach a level of efficiency that not only takes place on the metal. Don't get me wrong, I love the metal, but I'm not at home praying to the metal gods at night. But that metal and that framing has a ripple effect all the way down the line. We all know what it's like when someone puts in a wood wall and the wall's not straight, and the drywall sub comes in, and everybody looks at this drywall subcontractor and says, "Okay, work your magic." Right? And they're expected to go there, put up their drywall, and then start skim coating. When they're on the 5th layer and everything is finally flat, and they ask for their change order, everybody goes, "Why? This is the norm. Do you know you do this on every project?" Right? So here we go as far as when we're punching those studs for the holes, there's even a recess, which we call a dimple, to accommodate for the screw head. And when that screw head runs flat with my track, that means my drywall comes perfectly straight. Okay, and we all know after the drywall, then you've got furniture and cabinets that are going in and everything else. And all of this really is predicated on, or the efficiency or the accuracy of all that is predicated on the framing. So I just see it as a superior way to build. And if you're going to do something at a scalable level, okay, I can run that roll forming machine all night. I can just let it go, and those studs are here. So it's never slowing us down, and we're never really compromising on quality. We're always improving that quality. I know that was a long answer to a short question, but it's at the backbone of what we do, and it's come to the forefront here in LA now because the folks who experienced those fires, right, and it's more than 5,000 structures. Those folks say, okay, we're being reimbursed by our insurance companies if they have the insurance to replace what was there, which was a wood frame house. So there's the catch-22. Okay, I just got all these dollars. I'm going to pay to put up my wood frame house, and then we go back to the insurance company and said, we don't know if we're even going to insure your wood frame house, or we're going to charge you 5 times the amount. So what you're seeing now is everyone else is, wait a minute, this light gauge steel that we've been seeing in every office building in the United States, just about every hospital, it's indestructible. Why are we not using it in these fire-prone areas or areas where there are earthquakes or fires? So I think people are really being exposed to it for the first time. And like you mentioned earlier, in adversity is born I don't want to say opportunity, but creativity. Innovation comes out of that adversity. And the everyday person who wouldn't consider themselves creative looks at the world differently and says, it's a problem. How do I solve that problem? And does that technology exist? Or am I reinventing the wheel? And when they come to Mid-Rise, it doesn't take long with all the steel here and like, okay. And it doesn't have to look like a minimum security prison. That's the thing. When they come here, they say, wow, I could have my same home. And quite frankly, I don't think those homeowners care if there are marshmallows in the wall holding the house up, so long as it looks and feels like what they're striving for. The steel just happens to give them the comfort of knowing that building's going to be there for the generations, not for just a short 20 or 30-year time frame.
Well, certainly that talk of steel and more metal is music to our ears. And I think that's interesting where you say that, modular design puts extra demands on manufacturing in terms of precision and accuracy, and never really thought of that before. I think that's really interesting. But I'm kind of curious. So, I mean, you were a design guy, you were an architect, and suddenly you branch into manufacturing. How did that happen for you?
Well, I was out here, young architect, and working for another architect who was doing really large homes for all the movie stars, athletes, unlimited budgets, And he's like, wow, this is exciting, and it's cool, and you're getting into texture and materials and space and everything you studied in architecture, right? And it was really a thrill. And then I worked on a project for a bachelor, and it was a 22,000 square foot house. Okay, it had a basketball court. It had a subterranean parking garage for 20 cars. It had a ballroom. And in that project, I really started to question what was going on. And I said, is this what I'm here for? Am I supposed to just create a larger and prettier and more expensive house with the knowledge that I have? And I started to really second guess what was happening. At that point, I started to explore design for the folks who I felt needed it most. And he's doing nothing, I guess, not much different than what Andy Warhol started out doing. We get wrapped up in Andy Warhol and the eccentric kind of lifestyle he had and all the things he was doing in New York. But if I'm not mistaken, he's from your neck of the woods. He's from Pittsburgh, right? And he started out as a graphic designer and illustrator. And that whole pop art movement was very early on, started out saying we should be able to bring art, high quality art, to the masses. Okay, it shouldn't be just that royal family that has the ability to pay, $200,000 for a portrait for you to sit down and a famous artist does it. But everyone should be able to enjoy art because it does. It improves our quality of life, our mindset, all those different things. So, what did Warhol do? He said, I'm not going to sit in there like Vermeer or Da Vinci or whoever and paint for 6 months and then have a crew of apprentices to supplement. He changed the rules. He said, I'm going to change the manner by which I deliver the art. So instead of the brushes and oil paint and canvas, he breaks out a silkscreen machine and starts doing posters and doesn't do just a one-off work of art. He's doing 500 at a time. Right? And there's a lesson in that. And you say, if you do want to break from the norm, not only do you have to show a better path forward, but very often you need to break from the rules because some of those rules are so entrenched that you cannot move them. Right? And I've seen this over and over and over again. I gave this example, and I know it's a little off topic, about a friend of mine who started the Ultimate Fighting Championship. He came right out of, they're Brazilian fellows, they're here in Southern California. And you try to work within the rules of boxing and all those things to move forward this idea you have, and it just wasn't working. He said, you know what? We'll create our own. Let's do our own thing. So they created a whole bunch of new rules. And believe me, whenever you're doing something new, wherever there's progress, you're probably putting someone else out of work. Right? I tell this guy that the people who were putting horseshoes on horses and horse-drawn carriages were really upset with the automobile makers, right? Because that industry kind of dissolved. Well, that UFC thing met so much, I guess, opposition. Even Senator John McCain was against it, tried to banish it when it first started in Denver. But ultimately, folks said, wait a minute, this is another form of entertainment. Dollars can be made. And I think it's the largest grossing sport in the U.S. right now, maybe internationally, I'm not sure. But it taught me very early on, sometimes you have to change the rules. You have to find a loophole within the existing rules. This is where the creativity comes in, right? Because very often, I don't know that we've come up with anything new. All we're doing is seeing the way things are arranged in maybe some other industry and readapting it to what we're doing or changing the rules within our industry. And from that is born some new ideas.
Good stuff. Very interesting. Well, I'm kind of curious. I mean, looking ahead, what is your vision for Mid-Rise Modular, say, over the next decade or so? And do you think we really will make some progress at addressing the homeless situation?
Well, 2 years ago when we started, it was my mission to really put a dent in this. Because I split my time between Austin and Los Angeles, and in LA, I was in downtown, and the homeless challenge there, I can't describe it in words. If you walk that sidewalk, if you can walk the sidewalk, you've not seen anything like it. And these are human beings. These are fellow Americans. These are veterans. These are people who may be just down on their luck. There are people who are mentally incapacitated. There's some bad guys in there too. Don't get me wrong. I understand that. I'm not naive. But all you have to do is sleep on a sidewalk one night, just one night on concrete. And it's a life-changing experience. And no one should be doing that. And I'm not this kind of utopian visionary that thinks we're going to solve all the world's problems. I think those problems get solved locally, and then hopefully you have some success, and that works as a case study for others. And so Mid-Rise is hoping to really help out with what's taking place in Los Angeles. And the way that I can do, I'm not a priest, right? I'm not a politician. I can't hit it at that huge macro level and make a difference. But what I do know when it comes to construction is really important because I can find a way to get people indoors affordably and quickly. So that was really the inspiration behind Mid-Rise, really just have a home for every family on the planet. But we know we have to start in LA. And the problems we have here, we see as not just national, but we see it universal. In one of my presentations, I think the first slide talks about there's, I think, 70,000 homeless people in California. I think there's 50,000 homeless veterans in the U.S. But the staggering number is there's 1.6 billion people on the planet who don't have adequate housing. And when you start to think about that and you say, well, I'm going to go to work today and do that 20,000 square foot house for the bachelor, it really makes you question what you're here for and what is your mission. I believe that. We all have a mission in life, but some of us pursue it more than others. But that's my business partner, Diego Rivera. He's a genius. I am the luckiest guy in the world working with this fella, and he has resolved all the technical work. He's ahead of it. He's into AI. Everything is digitally driven. Our machines will talk to you if you want them to. And if you, like I mentioned earlier, you will figure out all the technical challenges. But why? Why are you doing that? Even your show is, you guys figured out how this telecast could work. So the volume works and the echo doesn't happen and all that stuff, right? But you're reaching out to millions of people and you're like an apostle. You're spreading that word. You're much like Buckminster Fuller. You have impact on people you don't even know. And that happens often with the projects that we do. We did a project in downtown Los Angeles. It's an 84-unit apartment building. And it's all folks who were on the street at one point. And I walked in one day, which is everyday clothes. I was with my son, didn't look like the goofy architect dressed in black. I walk in and asked the security guard, he's like, who are you? I said, do you mind if I take a look at the building? I said, I was involved with the design a little bit. He said, sure, come on in. And brings me up. We go up to the 5th floor and I'm with my son. And my son's at university right now. And this woman walks out and she said, who are you? Because they'd never seen me there before. They kind of know who's there. And I said, well, I was involved with designing the building. She said, you designed the building? I said, well, yeah, for the most part. I said, it was a great team we collaborated with. And she said, oh, you're an architect. I said, yeah. She said, I'm going to tell you something. What's that? She said, this is the most wonderful place I've ever lived in my life.
Wow.
Okay? And I'm sitting there, and some of the architects, we take it for granted. We design things, somebody puts it up, we look at it, we take the cool pictures, it gets an award, and then we move on to the next project. But the impact that it has on individuals just cannot be measured, right? So those awards you spoke about early on, I could get the awards all day long, but those moments are the special moments, right? And I think that I just can't put a price on that. And so Mid-Rise, we don't go out to seek those moments. Those moments are a consequence of our commitment to what we do. So that's a great question. I'm glad you asked that. I really get in there and think about it.
Well, and I saw that where the lady living in the one development project you'd put together talked about how this is just an amazing place to live. And if nothing else, this interview has made me very anxious to come out to LA sometime and spend some time with you and Diego and see what you're doing and see it firsthand, because you are touching on some big stuff here, and I certainly applaud you for that. So I know that you attended, and you mentioned it earlier, you attended the recent International Builders Show. Anything stand out that you saw or heard when you were at the show that you were saying, that's something that's going to make a difference in the future?
Sure. One of the things I saw that when I was at the Builders Show, 10 years ago, they didn't have a modular village. They had you walked into 3 million square feet in the convention center, and you just walked and walked and walked. And after 3 hours, you were intoxicated with building materials on your mind. You really couldn't differentiate a door from a faucet, become numb to it all. But here they had a little village with all of these modular examples out there. So you could go in and kick the tires. And that was really exciting to see. And then there's a company that we work with, and it's called FIBO, F-I-B-O. And FIBO creates primarily wet room or shower panels. They're prefabricated, and we are constantly reverse engineering anything in the construction world. So you'll be familiar with this. Anyone who's working in wood construction has to put up a shower, right? It's a process. I mean, you have to put up a scratch coat, you have to put up waterproofing, you have green board, you have a hot mop with tar. No one wants to be on the job when the hot mop guys are there. They fill it up with water. They wait 2 days. The inspector comes. He comes back, does another inspection of the stucco or the waterproofing or mud and mortar that's on the wall. And you sit there after 2 weeks and you go, can we please start the shower? When it's this process, right? I go, we've been building showers the same way since Pompeii, right? It's just always been that way. Well, this company has been in business in Europe for quite some time. They've been here in the States, but we want to really encourage people to use their product. What it does is it's a marine-grade plywood with a surface on it. Okay, and that surface can look like tile, it can look like stone, and it's a composite material. But when those two materials come together, not only do they tongue and groove, but they snap together, and you cannot see the joint. I'm sitting there like, they have... I'm just trying to test it, and I just couldn't see the joints. This is incredible. Well, all of that process that I spoke to you about the waterproofing, for doing a traditional tile or stone bathroom, or even an FRP shower stall, is gone. One person can install an entire bathroom, not just the shower, in 1 day. And I don't need any of those crazy inspections. This material leapfrogs all of that. You say, wait a minute, you're going to line your shower with wood? You're the steel guy. What's going on? That's the only wood I'll use in an entire project. So that marine grade plywood absolves us of all those waterproofing issues. It's easy to install. The people who work there are incredible. They have, folks come out and do installations. They have videos. They make it so simple for you. And everyone I share this with, including the traditional contractors and the traditional architects, say, I have to use this, right? It just makes sense. So they have a display there, and that's why I go to the show, because there's got to be 25,000, 30,000 products on display there.
Oh, it's overwhelming. It's amazing.
Yeah, it is overwhelming. But if I can find two products that I'm really enamored with, it changes the way we do things. That's a successful trip. So I try to be real discerning. And one of the things we're doing that we created in Los Angeles something called Team Prefab, right? And teamprefab.com. And Team Prefab is responding to exactly what you're talking about, where instead of having to go to the builder show once a year in Las Vegas and have to deal with, I don't know, they must have 600,000 people walking through that place, and after a while, it's like going to the World's Fair or the pregame Super Bowl festivities, and it's just madness. The Team Prefab is a center whereby anything that is modular friendly and modular focused is brought under one roof in California, in Los Angeles. And they have a little village there where they're installing, just like at the Builder Show, prototypes from different modular companies. So that's critical. Imagine you are in the Palisades and you're trying to get a prefab house, get back in, or you even want an ADU or something along those lines. You really can't go kick the tires somewhere. If I like the guys in Utah, I have to go to Utah to see it. Or I have to go to Ohio and see it. I have to make that effort. But here we're consolidating it all in one spot, and you get to go there and benefit from all the experience and from the modular industry. There's no place where it coalesces in one spot like the International Builder Show does for construction. So, but the Builder Show is always inspiring, and you can go there and you can learn a tremendous amount of what's going on, not only in the construction, but how they bring it to the public. They really make it accessible. It was a great trip. I could only stay for one day, but it was a great trip.
So that other you said was teamprefab.com. Is that right?
Yes.
I'm going to check that out today. Great. So I'm curious, what advice would you have for someone out there who may be younger and just starting their career in design or construction or manufacturing? What advice might you have for them?
Well, in the last 6 months, I've been hearing how AI is the enemy of mankind. I'm speaking to a young lady in high school, and I said, everyone's scared of this. I said, but your generation, I'm sure, is embracing this, and it's a tool. You're really going to make some great things happen. She said, oh, no. This is not good. So in the schools already, they're talking about how this is something that's not friendly. And I can tell all these younger folks, imagine when you're sitting in Missouri, let's say, okay, and it's 1910, and you have a horse, and you have a horse-drawn cart or something, and this thing with wheels on it comes rolling down the street, making noise, and there's smoke coming out of the back of it, and you're like, what is this? We're being invaded, right? So I think in every major technological age, there's this fear that we have as human beings. It's a survival mechanism, right? I remember when my great aunt, I have all these notes that came from Italy, and my mom telling me, when they put the first man on the moon in the early 60s, she said these Italian women, these old Italian ladies that barely spoke English, said, the end of the world is coming now, right? Because there's this fear of the unknown.
Right.
And I would tell folks that don't be scared.
Yeah.
Pursue it. The technology is just getting stronger. The people are there's more and more intellectual thought that's spread out. Are people smarter? I don't know. But I do know the exchange of that information is happening at a much larger scale. So the resources at your disposal have never been that plentiful to any other generation before you. So embrace that, take the blinders off, become a lifelong student, a lifelong learner. And I wish I could say, go out there and be that architect, but I think the architectural profession is shifting. I think that the folks like myself want to be able to bring a better product, a better process to that world of construction, and to pursue the same old process. I think it's almost negligent. I don't know how we do that. Everything in our lives is really about improving our condition, making it better for the next generation. And I think that's something inherent to who we are as human beings. So to not do that in the building industry, when you have the ability, I think is very short-sighted, to not pursue that path. But just get out there and do it. We have something what we call productized architecture. Okay, so it's this fusing of a hybrid of a product design and product manufacturing with architecture. And when you do that, it requires you to make some changes. And not everyone's going to be happy with those changes, but there are going to be some people who are just absolutely thrilled. And if you can reach that one person at that apartment building that never lived in a house like this before, and it was not because it was a modular building, I can tell you what you're doing has impact on the world. And they really, at the micro and macro level, and if you stay focused on that, you'll always have a client, first of all, right? You'll always have someone you'll be able to serve. But necessity is the mother of invention. And I think innovation in the future is really what's going to set you apart from the rest of the pack.
Well, better to adopt technology and change than to be buried by it. And I think back when I was younger and handheld calculators first came out, yes, to listen to the older generations, that was going to be the demise of mankind. But didn't quite turn out that way. So, Peter, this has been a great discussion. Thank you. We're close to wrapping up what we call the business end of things. Anything you haven't been able to share with our audience today that you wanted to squeeze in here at the end?
Sure. I think, first of all, thank you both so much for providing a forum for us to reach out. This industry, I spoke to someone not long ago, and they said, this industry is in its infancy. And they said, what are you talking about? People have been trying this for the last 100 years. I said, yeah, but the perfect storm is now upon us. I said, with technology, there's really a global marketplace. I can get materials from anywhere. And I don't want it to be a cliche, but when they say if you can think it, you can make it happen. You can dream it, you can make it happen. And it's just a matter of surrounding yourself with the people who have maybe shared that vision or have that knowledge that really enables you to collaborate and do some incredible things. So I'm inspired to come on your show. You're asking the right questions here. And I'm happy to share. So when you do come out to California and come to see our factory, we'll be happy to host you and show you what we've done and hoping we're making a positive difference.
I'm going to make sure that happens. Thank you. So now we're at a time of the show where we do something called rapid fire questions. So Peter, these are 7 questions. You have no idea what we're about to ask. Are you up to the challenge of rapid fire?
Aye, big time, of course.
Okay. Let's go ahead and get started. Ryan, you want to ask the first question?
Yes, I would love to. Question number 1, can you tell us about a product or service that you have purchased or obtained recently that was kind of a real game changer for you? Anything like a new calendar app or anything like that?
Bebo. Yeah. Bebo. Sorry, I cheated on that one. Yeah.
What is that?
Bebo. Oh, I can explain that. That's the one I spoke about earlier, that shower technology.
Okay, gotcha. Good stuff. Well, I'm going to check that out. Question number 2. What is something available today that is related to construction or design that you would put in a time capsule for folks to discover 200 years from now? Something you think it's that important that this should not be missed 200 years from now?
It'd be a simple sheet of paper.
Oh, wow.
That says, practice kindness, help your fellow man.
Love it.
The tools are going to change. That time capsule, to your point, I could put our roll forming machine in there. I can put all our apps in our smartphone. And they'll look at it and go, this is the way the cavemen used to live. We don't live that way anymore, right? But I think the universal message, no matter what the generation, is one of just help your fellow man. Make the world a better place. Leave it better than how you found it.
Love it.
Great answer. Question number 3. If you could ban one word from existence, what would it be and why?
It would be pessimism. I've seen so many incredible people in our field. I've taught for 20 years. And we have folks that come in, and I can tell you, talent is everywhere. It really is. It's everywhere. But some folks leverage it, and other people just shoot it down themselves. They don't give themselves that opportunity to exercise that part of their brain, that muscle in their brain that's really inquisitive. And for whatever the reason, they won't pursue it. and things get kind of cut short. And I think in that discovery of doing something innovative, or that discovery of you're capable of doing something, is the you plant the seeds for growth for your entire life and your work, your family, all of that, right? And I'm not this kind of born again priest, right? I'm talking about just some basic needs that we have as individuals to stay positive, because the world is a rough place, you know. And
Yep.
I when I see the pessimism, especially with students, they come in and they're at a university setting, they're in shorts, tank tops, they're completely relaxed. I mean, there's a war going on in the Ukraine. You realize that someone your age is over there, a tank top, and so they're lucky they have an army jacket on and probably being shot at. So, you know, be thankful for where you are and make the best of that situation. And the pessimism is the thing I think that pulls people back too often. Sometimes it's a great thing because it prepares you for the worst case scenario, and I kind of like that. You know, you experience, you sit there and go, okay, this could work out bad. You know, what's dangerous, right? And what's not safe. And it protects you in some ways, but in general, I think it kind of stops so much progress and so many great things from happening.
That's a great answer. Man, I've enjoyed this conversation so much. So next question. What is something that you are curious about right now? Maybe something you might be researching or trying to learn about?
This has nothing to do with architecture.
And I hoped it wouldn't.
Yeah, that's great. Yeah, you're right. So I am fascinated with Roman history. Every time I'll give you real quick, I go to Rome. I've been to Rome many times, and I've seen everything, and I've studied everything there. And I'm in the taxi, and we're going to see an in-law outside of Rome. We're going to dinner, and we get in a taxi cab. And in my broken Italian, I'm speaking to the cab driver, and I said, "Listen, it's Friday night. There's traffic everywhere. How come you guys don't have like a subway?" I said, even Budapest. I said, everybody has a subway in Europe, and that's how you get around. He said, we have two of them. I'm like, okay. He said, but they're really small. And I said, I never even heard of this subway in Rome. I said, why don't they have a major metro link or something? He goes, every time we've tried, we get down, whether it's 20 feet, 60 feet, we hit a building. He said, and the archaeologists come in, all the historians are going to stop. You know how the Italians are. Nothing gets built in a day, right? They stop. He said, finally, the government said, forget it. We're not doing it. So I'm sitting there, and I'm not ready to start complaining about the traffic. But what dawned on me is everything I thought I knew about Roman history, I know only a small percentage of it. If you think about it, the Romans were really overthrown around, 1000 AD, right? Well, from then until like the Renaissance, we're almost 300 years, there was no Italy. There were no Romans. There were city-states. Each of those different cities kind of ruled themselves. They would fight with each other as well. Well, you go to Rome and you see the Colosseum. If I'm in Los Angeles and I abandon a house here, I go on vacation for a month, I have to worry that some homeless folks haven't moved in. And when they move in, what's the first thing they do? They loot the place. They take all the copper out.
Right.
They sell the copper. You come back and it's a shell of what it was. Well, this happened for 300 years in Rome. People came in, they stripped the marble off of the Colosseum. What you're seeing in Rome is the skeletal structure of what once was there. So what was looted and removed from that place is beyond comprehension. I can't get my mental arms around it. You know, so it's always something new there. I know that story will never be finished in terms of being written. It just goes on and on. So it's always a wonderful discovery, and the food is excellent. So there's a reason for me to go back to Italy over and over and over again.
There you go. Love it.
Very cool. My oldest stepdaughter is actually studying abroad over there right now, and she is loving it.
Where about?
She's staying in Florence, but she's traveling every weekend. She's in Budapest right now, actually. She just got there today. So, yeah, we love hearing the stories and seeing the pictures over there.
Budapest as well.
Hopefully we can make it over to visit.
Do it.
Yeah.
Do it. You need 3 or 4 weeks minimum. Don't do that 5-day trip with the flag that you follow around.
That's what I've heard.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. Next question. What is your favorite meal?
It's just about any darn pasta. You know, I'm a pasta fiend. that's it. And you just tell me whatever the pasta is, I'm in. Don't get me wrong. We went to Italy last summer, and from Italy we went to Japan. And my God, I mean, I was so spoiled. But Japanese food is incredible as well. But I have to say pasta and that's it. I don't want to go beyond that one. Just the pasta.
Awesome. Next to last question. What would the 8-year-old you have said that you wanted to be when you grew up?
Oh, I had it all planned out.
Okay.
I was going to play for the LA Rams and the LA Lakers. And I was from New Jersey.
Okay. Well, you ended up in LA, so that's good.
Thank you. I'm feeling good about that now. That's funny. Yeah, I may have been. There was just me and one other young guy. We all played football growing up, and we were the only LA fans, I think, for maybe 3,000 miles. And then the Lakers on top. Well, you guys would know this. I mean, Wilt Chamberlain and Gail Goodrich and the Lakers had Roman Gabriel, all these throwback guys, you talk about today. And it was exciting to watch them. And I had an uncle who had moved to Los Angeles in the 60s. And, he was in World War II and all that. But he was always cut from a different cloth. He was always a little bit wilder than the rest of the family. And he would come and visit in his Corvette. And there was kind of mystique about California. It was kind of this cool place. So I didn't know anything about it, really. But I liked the two sports teams, and my career got sidetracked. I don't know what happened there, but that career as a professional athlete, it didn't work out. I think it went from 8 years old to maybe 12 years old. And it wasn't like I was in the NFL for a few years and then had an injury, But all good.
At some point, reality set in. I understand.
Yeah.
All right. Final question here. We'll end on a little bit more of a serious note. What would you like to be remembered for at the end of your days?
I don't want to diffuse the question. I don't know if it's important for me to be remembered. As long as there's a few photographs out there I share with the kids and the families, that's the crazy uncle that tried to make a difference. That's good enough for me.
That's cool.
I've never. I mean, I don't think about that. Maybe by design, I'm not thinking about it subconsciously. Like, just leave that one alone. You got enough to do now.
Yeah.
Don't worry about what's happening later. But now, because you planted the seed, I'm going to spend the day walking through the factory. What am I going to be remembered for, right? and I sure some guy in the factory line here, and I'll say, what should I be remembered for? Just go get us some lunch. We'll remember you. We'll remember you all week long if you do that. So, but that's a great question. Sometimes that's a measuring stick. It's a guideline. So I'll send you an email on that one. Thank you.
Well, that's a good answer, though. And so, Peter, you impressed me as a simple guy, but with a big forward-thinking mission, and I love that. So for anyone who wants to get in touch with you or with Mid-Rise Modular, what are some good ways for them to do that?
Well, there's two ways. One is the best way is to just go onto our website, and midrisemodular.com. If you want to get into really direct contact with me, you can go on to DeMariaDesign.com. And the DeMaria Design website is really the architectural end of things. Mid-Rise is where it all comes together as a vertically integrated company. So we still get hired to do traditional projects. People think we're pretty good at what we do, but they don't want to get involved in modular, right? So we still think all those things we were speaking about, we can bring to the forefront. And if it works in modular, it does. But if not, we know our responsibility as architects. There's one other way. They should simply come onto your podcast, right? And they got this interview. They're going to know all about me just listening to this podcast. And gosh, if I get a hold of this, I'll share this with the potential clients. This is where you go. Okay, speak to Todd, speak to Ryan, and you'll get an in-depth understanding of what we do and how you can get a hold of us.
Well, we appreciate that. Thank you. And we will put your contact information in the show notes as well. So, Peter, this has been great. Thank you so much for your time, for being with us here today. And just to let our audience know, we all got in our challenge words. Ryan, you had the word
calendar.
You got it in there. I had Buckeye, and Peter, your word was, or your phrase was?
Air guitar.
And you worked it in well. Thank you. Thank you. Well, this has been a lot of fun. Again, thank you very much, Peter. And thank you to our audience for tuning into this very special episode of Construction Disruption with Peter DeMaria of Mid-Rise Modular, LLC. Please watch for future episodes of our podcast. We always are blessed with great guests. Please feel free to leave a review on Apple Podcasts or give us a thumbs up on YouTube. Until the next time we're together, though, keep on disrupting, keep on challenging those in the world around you to better ways of doing things. And don't forget to have a positive impact on everyone you encounter. Make them smile, encourage them, simple yet powerful things we all can do. So God bless and take care. This is Isaiah Industries signing off until the next episode of Construction Disruption.
This podcast is produced by Isaiah Industries, manufacturer of specialty metal roofing and other building products.